The wind howled across the dry plains as the stagecoach rattled toward the small town of Dry Creek. Inside sat a young woman named Lily Parker, clutching a faded letter in trembling hands. Her dress was simple, worn from travel, and her eyes, though soft, were filled with fear and uncertainty. She had agreed to become a mail-order bride, traveling hundreds of miles to marry a man she had never met. The letter had been kind. "I'm a rancher," it said, "not a man of many words. My name's Jacob Holt. I can promise you an honest life, if not an easy one." That promise had been enough for Lily, who had nothing left after her parents' death and the foreclosure of their small farm. Still, her heart pounded with doubt as the coach neared its stop. When the wheels finally ground to a halt, she saw him standing by the station. Jacob Holt, a tall, broad man with sun-browned skin and a weathered face. He looked older than she expected, his eyes shaded beneath the brim of his hat. She hesitated before stepping down, clutching her small bag like a shield. "You must be Miss Parker," he said, his voice deep but careful. "Yes," she whispered. He nodded once, took her bag without asking, and helped her into the wagon. The ride to his ranch was quiet. The land stretched endlessly around them, dust, fences, cattle, and a lonely sky. She sneaked glances at him now and then. His hands were rough, his shoulders strong, but there was a gentleness in the way he guided the horses. When they arrived, he led her inside a modest wooden house. It smelled faintly of leather and smoke. "You can have this room," he said, showing her a small but clean space. "I thought we'd take time before we decide anything official." The word startled her. She had expected to be his wife the moment she arrived. But he didn't push. Instead, he treated her like a guest, giving her time to breathe. The first few days were awkward. Lily tried to help around the house, cooking, mending, tending the garden, but every sound made her jump. The creak of a door, a horse's whinny, even Jacob's boots on the porch. Her last employer in the city had been cruel, and she'd learned to flinch at a raised voice or sudden movement. Jacob noticed. One evening, after dinner, he spoke softly across the table. "You don't have to be afraid here, Lily. I don't know what life you've had, but I don't aim to make it worse." His words melted something inside her. That night, for the first time, she slept without fear. Days turned into weeks. Jacob would rise before dawn, work the cattle, fix fences, and sometimes hum an old tune as he worked. Lily began to join him, bringing him water, helping mend tack, or sitting on the porch sewing while he worked nearby. They spoke more now, slowly, carefully, like two people testing the sound of trust. One afternoon, a storm rolled in sudden and fierce. Jacob rushed to bring the cattle in, and Lily, without thinking, ran out to help. The wind whipped her dress, rain stung her skin, but she followed him into the field. Together, they drove the herd toward the barn. When a frightened calf got stuck in a ditch, Lily threw herself into the mud to pull it free. Jacob grabbed her arm, helping her up, their hands slick with rain and dirt. When they finally stumbled back to the porch, soaked to the bone, he looked at her, really looked, and for a moment, neither could breathe. "You're braver than you think," he said quietly. She smiled, shivering. "Maybe I just didn't want to lose that calf." Jacob chuckled, a deep, warm sound that filled the cold air between them. That night, by the fire, they sat together wrapped in a blanket. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and he didn't move away. A week later, trouble came to the ranch. A neighboring rancher, known for his temper, accused Jacob of letting his cattle graze on his land. He came storming up the drive with two men, guns visible at their sides. Lily froze as the shouting began. Jacob stood his ground, calm but firm. "You're mistaken," he said. "Take another look before you make trouble you'll regret." The men laughed, cruel and mocking. One of them stepped closer, looking at Lily with a sneer. "Didn't know you had company, Holt. Pretty thing." Before Jacob could react, Lily's fear turned to fire. She stepped between them, eyes blazing. "Get off this land," she said, her voice steady. Now, something in her tone silenced them. Maybe it was the storm that still seemed to burn in her gaze. They left with muttered curses, and Jacob turned to her, astonished. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, but his voice trembled with pride. "I'm tired of being afraid," she whispered. From that day on, things changed. She wasn't just a guest anymore, she was part of the ranch, part of his life. They laughed more, worked side by side, shared stories in the quiet hours. One evening, As the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, Jacob brought her a small box. Inside was a simple silver ring. "I don't want you to stay because you have to," he said, his voice rough. "I want you to stay because you want to." Tears filled her eyes. "I do want to." He took her hand, slipped the ring on her finger, and kissed her for the first time. It was gentle, patient, like everything he'd been from the start. Months later, the ranch flourished. The land seemed softer, greener somehow. Neighbors who once whispered now smiled when they passed by. And at the heart of it all were Jacob and Lily, two souls who had once been strangers, bound now by trust, respect, and the slow, steady fire of love. Sometimes, at night, Lily would stand on the porch and watch the stars. The fear that once haunted her was gone, replaced by something deep and peaceful. Jacob would join her, his arms slipping around her waist. "Still glad you came?" he'd ask softly. She'd smile up at him, eyes shining in the starlight. "More than I ever thought I'd be." And there, beneath the wide western sky, the girl who had once come to marry out of desperation had found something she never expected: home, hope, and love that would last a lifetime.